But first, Dr. Diana Greene worked in public education for 37 years. She most recently served as the superintendent for Duval County Public Schools and is currently the CEO of Children's Literacy Initiative. She'll be speaking at the upcoming TEDx event here in Jacksonville. Dr. Greene, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning.
Also joining us is Jean Grimsley, executive producer of TEDx Jacksonville. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Appreciate it, both of you. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Greene. You've had an extensive career in public education and the public school system, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But first, catch us up on what it is that you're doing now.
Yeah, I'm very excited about my new position. I'm the CEO of Children's Literacy Initiative. We are an anti-racist organization focused on dismantling structural racism as it relates to literacy proficiency. We focus on educating teachers on how to best provide a culturally relevant literacy instruction for African American and Latinx students.
Mm-hmm. And so that mission of teaching anti-racism through literacy is targeted at people of color, children of color, or is it have a broader audience than that?
It has the ability to have a broader audience. When you're teaching an anti-racist curriculum, you're benefiting all students. It isn't, even though our focus is for African American and Latinx students, because when you look at the data, 1 and 4 students are proficient readers by 4th grade for African American and Latin students. That is unacceptable. And that focus is ensuring that those students can be seen, are validated, and that they feel a sense of joy about who they are, and providing text that shares their experiences, things that they can engage and have a sense of, oh, this character is similar to me. And being able to bring that forward is very important for young children.
Mm-hmm. And you were at a recent banned book reading and book giveaway at James Weldon Johnson Park a week or two ago. What is it about your literacy work right now that overlaps with the issue of banned books or restricted books?
Well, actually, we don't overlap with banned or restricted books. We provide cultural relevant books. And the books that I was providing or giving away at that conference were they're not banned. I believe I can find them in any library in the state of Florida, but it was focused on culturally relevant books for students of color so that, again, they can have their own collection of books that represent themselves, where they can be seen, feel joy in reading books. You know, I had parents coming up and saying, oh, my child has an interest in music. And it was very easy to give them a book about Duke Ellington or Wynton Marsalis. We had books about him. So again, this is focused on cultural relevant books for children. It just happened to be at the ASALA conference, and they were focused on banned books.
Okay. I think I saw you with Anne Frank, Diary of Anne Frank, which I think is one of the books that you can no longer get at some, I know certainly in Clay County that's on the list.
Yes, but I do not believe that is the case in Duval.
Okay. So talk a little bit about your 37 years in the public education system. How in that time did the role of educators or education administrators change?
Oh, well, in just the last few years, leading schools or school districts has changed tremendously. COVID just flipped it on its ear. I've not seen anything like this since my tenure in education. Now we're focused on so many other things other than providing students a high quality education. The things that we administrators deal with today are they weren't even taught in college courses. They weren't taught in doctoral courses. You had to learn on the job and in the thick of the fire. So you had to figure it out.
Those COVID and post-COVID years, more difficult place to be as an administrator?
Absolutely. Much more challenging than pre-COVID.
Mm-hmm. Do you, as somebody who's not in the system anymore, have any advice, suggestions? Do you talk to people who are still in the system you coach anybody about how to deal with the pressures of that job?
Absolutely. It still goes back to focusing on your why. Why are you doing this? Is this job that you're doing your career? And if it is your career and you feel it is your purpose, then you're going to have to weather the storm. Uh, Public education has always been a swinging pendulum. For some reason, we can never just find the middle. And it will swing back again, and they will need to adjust. I think someone shared one of my favorite words a couple years ago, pivot. They need to figure out how to be flexible, how to adjust, and how to communicate, how to articulate what you are doing in your school or in your school district, and how the strategies or what you are doing is benefiting all students. And all students does not mean one size fits all. It means we have to have diversity of thought and action when it comes to children, because they come in very different packages, and we need to figure out how to support all of them in different ways.
So tell me how your TEDx talk that you're planning, it ties in with the theme of this year's TEDx, and a little bit about, whether that includes some of your background in public education, or if that's a completely separate topic.
Well, no, those two topics kind of intersect. It will be a little bit about my background in public education and the current state of African American female superintendents. What is the current state of the number of African American female superintendents in our country?
What is this? What is the status?
It is a 1.4% of all superintendents are African American female. That's 198 out of 13,728 public school superintendents.
Do you see, is that a number that has been steady, increasing, decreasing? And what do you make of a number that is that low?
Yeah, 3 years ago, it was 3%. So it's decreasing. It's going in the wrong direction.
Why do you suppose that is?
There's a number of reasons, and I think my TED Talk will answer that, and I prefer to let people find out. Come to the TEDx, and you'll hear what I believe is part of the reason why those numbers are dwindling.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'd like to get back to that in just a second, but while we're on that topic, why don't we just tell people what it is that the TEDx talk is focusing on, the theme, and what people, how can they attend? Jean, give us a little bit of the lowdown.
Sure. The conference will be held here at WJCT Studios on Saturday, October the 14th. We have 10 speakers across a wide range of topics. We've got 3 wonderful performances, including a pretty legendary 95 South that'll be closing out our show with, among their hits, Woot, There It Is. It's a full-day conference that includes lots of experiential activities, the talks themselves, the performances, as well as lunch and an afterglow party. The tickets are $135, and we are very excited about our lineup this year. As I said, it touches on many different disciplines.
And how's the theme chosen, and how do people fit their speeches to that theme?
We meet as a team at our retreat in January to determine our theme for the year. It's not something that we share with potential speakers, because we have found in the past that everyone writes to the theme rather than sharing the one idea that they're really enthusiastic about sharing. We use the theme this year, it's human nature, not just to represent all the ways that we are connected to one another worldwide, but also to explore the tension between humans and nature in this changing climate environment. One of our speakers, Ann Colinisi, is the a Chief Resilience Officer for the City of Jacksonville, and she'll be talking about how Jacksonville is using data to become a resilient city. We have a speaker who is an anthropologist who made her field work in the mass graves of the disappeared in Argentina and Guatemala. And that experience led her to understand and appreciate how big data has the potential to violate human rights. And so she is now an AI ethicist, and she'll be talking about the importance of international legislation controlling the as she calls them, the princelings of AI. We have another speaker, Dr. Christy Gendron, who's a neurobiologist who studies fruit flies. And she has found some pretty remarkable research that shows how the sensory inputs, pheromones, sight, smell, actually impact aging, both in
Fascinating.
flies, but also in humans. That's really the focus of her research, is understanding how these neurological changes in fruit flies, which share about 70% of our genes, can lead to the same effects in humans.
Very interesting. That's. I want to ask people, if you want to join the conversation, you can call us at 549-2937, or you can tweet us at FCC on air. We have a call right now. Brian in Mandarin, I believe, has a question for Dr. Greene. Good morning, Brian. How's it going?
Good morning. Hi, Dr. Greene. I have a question for you about back in January in Duval County, we went from having 1.6 million titles to having just over 1,300. Could you give some insight into what made the decision to remove the books upon approval here in Duval County?
Thank you, Brian.
Well, I would like to address that. That information is not correct. Duval County did have 1.6 million titles, and I think they still have well over 1 million titles. It's very important that you reach out to the district. They can provide you that list of books that are on the list that may be considered, not maybe, they are considered banned, but maybe what you're hearing is over 13,000 books went through a review, and that's different than saying they're banned.
And those are, you think, back on the shelves now, having gone through that review, or still in that process? Or
I would not know where the review is at that time, but before I left, I know that many books made their way back on the shelf after they've gone through a review.
And so, I mean, while we're on the topic, what is your take on the fact that books had to go through that kind of review?
Well, it is required by law, and so the school district developed the committee based on the requirements of the law, and every school district is required, if a parent or anyone wants to challenge a book or indicate that they feel like that book should not be available, that book goes through a review.
But what's your take on the law, I guess?
Well, I'm one that I feel like students need to have text, and text that represents all aspects of our life. But I'm also one that we need to make sure our books that we are making sure that children have access is developmentally appropriate. So if someone wants to challenge a book, that is not new. We've always had books challenged over the years, and Duval has always had a book review committee. So this wasn't, the law did not impact really our practice. What is impacting the practice is now so many more books are under review. And
it's kind of that mandated review, right? Like parents weren't able to just sort of initiate a mandatory review by raising questions previously, right?
Oh, yes. In our district, parents could always say, I want to challenge this book, because many, especially at the secondary level, where we would give out summer reading lists, and our advanced courses, AP, they're reading books that college students are reading, and parents could always say, I don't feel like this book is right for my child. I want to do a review, or they could request, can I have an alternate book instead of my child reading this?
To be clear, like if they had an objection or wanted the book reviewed, it wouldn't result in the book being taken off the shelves at all libraries in the school system pending that review. Is that right?
A review is exactly what it is. If the school district felt, you know what, there's legitimate concerns about this book, it could be we're removing it from the classroom list, but now it's put in the library. And because in the library, students can make a choice. The law has made it no flexibility. It is easy. Once it's reviewed, if it's not considered approved, then it's banned. But what I'm stating is Duval already had a process in place for families if they ever wanted to challenge a book.
Gotcha. We have another caller. If you want to join the conversation, you can call us at 549-2937 or tweet us at FCC on air. You can email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or message us on Facebook. We have a call here from Susan in Mandarin. Good morning, Susan. How's it going?
Hi, great. Thanks so much, Dr. Greene, for coming on the show and answering our questions. I love the new work you're doing, but I also miss you as superintendent. I have a question about how the charter schools are reporting to the Citizen Oversight Committee. This is glaring on how they're not reporting the information, especially since the city is going to give $1.4 million to a charter school, and I can't find it on the dashboard how much of our sales surtax money they've already spent and what they spent it on. The charter school facility building is actually owned by someone who's controlled by John Wood, and John Wood is also on the charter school governing board, I believe. So it seems like a conflict of interest and possibly a violation of the new law implemented by HB 1259, which says that our sales surtax money and other capital outlay funding can't be spent on leases with related parties. So I'm just wondering did you feel frustration in trying to get the charter schools to report to the sales surtax committee? In 2019, your referendum was wonderful, saying you give money to charter schools.
Susan, I'm going to say that's a lot of question right there. I'm going to give the Dr. Greene an opportunity to bite off a little bit of that and give us an answer. Thanks.
Well, good morning, Miss Susan. It is important that you take your concerns back to the Oversight Committee and the school board. At this time, I'm not the superintendent, so I would not provide anything fruitful information other than it's important that you take that back to the Oversight Committee and the school board and continue your efforts to ensure that charter and traditional public schools are equitably using the half-cent sales tax dollars, which is the most important thing.
That was a big victory while you were superintendent, and also I think a compromise because of the way that money is being divided with charter schools. Obviously, that's not an afterthought in this conversation. There's a lot of money going to charter schools now that previously was given to traditional public schools, traditional, kind of public education. What is the challenge, as you see it, of the way that the state has begun accommodating charter schools? I know that they're public schools in a fashion, but they're not necessarily accountable to the school board, and they're internally managed, even though they get that money from the public school system. How do you feel that's coexisting with traditional public education?
Well, I am a big supporter of traditional public education. As superintendent, that was my number one focus. But as the CEO of Children's Literacy Initiative, my now focus is on all students, especially African American and Latinx students, and ensure that they get a high quality education through literacy. What's probably more impactful or having a negative impact is the empowerment scholarship. And that is dollars leaving public education, whether it's charter or traditional, and going to private schools with absolutely no accountability. Charter schools still have the same accountability as traditional public schools as it relates to assessments, school grades. Those things are still the same between charter and traditional. But the empowerment scholarship is taking tax dollars that would go to public education and giving it to private school, yet there will be no accountability of how those students perform or no accountability for what's happening in the private schools, but using public tax dollars.
Do you see the kind of universal vouchers, as they're called, being, is it going to dismantle public education? Do you see that direction, or do you think that the public schools are going to be able to absorb the loss of dollars, the loss of those students, and the per pupil funding that comes with them?
It's going to be very challenging for public schools to absorb those lost dollars. Those lost dollars are dollars that no longer are impacting the classroom. as we've seen with the data from post-COVID, students are not where they were pre-COVID. And even worse, students of African American and Latinx descent ethnicities are even further behind. That gap has widened since COVID. And those dollars need to be in the classroom to support the instruction that is happening for those students, all students. When we lift our boats that are the lowest in the water, then we're going to lift all boats. And it's important that we really focus in on where do we want our country to be decades from now, because what I see is that students are years behind, and it's going to take over a decade to get them back to where hopefully beyond where they were pre-COVID. But in the meantime, we're going to be graduating students, or students are going to drop out because they are further behind than they would have been if COVID had not happened. And so this is a real concern for me, and should be for everyone, that we need to get the focus back on teaching and learning and ensuring that we can give our students the best opportunity to be successful.
If you are just joining us, we're talking to Dr. Diana Greene, former school superintendent, Duval County Public Schools, and Jean Grimsley, who's the executive producer of TEDx Jacksonville, where Dr. Greene will be speaking in 2 weeks about?
Just under.
Yeah. I want to ask you, Dr. Greene, a little bit about, I know you're saying your TEDx talk will be discussing the decline in superintendents of color in this nation. Sounds like it's in a fairly precipitous decline. But obviously your own departure is an example of that. How does it feel that you left the school system now that you've kind of got that in your rear view? Do you view that as a voluntary departure or an ouster?
You know, I view everything as you make a decision about what is best for you. And it doesn't matter whether there's pressure applied. My mother used to say, you need to decide whether you're going to make lemonade out of your lemons or sit there and be a sourpuss about it. And I chose to make lemonade. And I am extremely happy and thankful to this community, because I feel like in the 5 years that I was superintendent, we made great strides. We made great progress. We passed 2 referendums, one for building new schools, another for teacher compensation. In the 5 years, I was fortunate to work with a team that experienced the highest graduation rate in Duval's history. So I have nothing to feel like walking away wasn't the right thing. But I do miss the people that I worked with, the leaders at the schools who were phenomenal, and will continue to do what's best for the students of Duval County.
But you talk about lemons and lemonade. The decision to leave, was that your decision, or was that a decision that you felt you just couldn't avoid, that was foisted on you?
It was my decision. It was my decision to leave. And when you make a decision, it leads to some form of a consequence, and that consequence would be positive. And for me, it led to being the CEO of Children's Literacy Initiative, which I feel was very positive.
Yeah, that sounds like it's been a good landing for you. Well, I appreciate you being here today. Thanks for your conversation. We're looking forward to the TEDx. It's a great annual event. If you all haven't been to it before, it's a extraordinary exploration of really good minds in Jacksonville. So tell us again the date of that.
October the 14th, Saturday, TEDxjacksonville.com or Eventbrite for tickets.
Right on. Okay, well, thank you both so much for being here. It was wonderful.